Quotations from The Fire from Within. There is no completeness without sadness and longing, for without them there is no sobriety, no kindness. Wisdom without kindness and knowledge without sobriety are useless. Self-importance is man's greatest enemy. What weakens him is feeling offended by the deeds and misdeeds of his fellow men. Self-importance requires that one spend most of one's life offended by something or someone. In order to follow the path of knowledge, one has to be very imaginative. On the path of knowledge, nothing is as clear as we'd like it to be. If seers can hold their own in facing petty tyrants, they can certainly face the unknown with impunity. And then they can even withstand the presence of the unknowable. What seems natural is to think that a warrior who can hold his own in the face of the unknown can certainly face petty tyrants with impunity. But that's not necessarily so. What destroyed the superb warriors of ancient times was to rely on that assumption. Nothing can temper the spirit of a warrior as much as the challenge of dealing with impossible people in positions of power. Only under those conditions can warriors acquire the sobriety and serenity to withstand the pressure of the unknowable. The unknown is something that is veiled from man, shrouded perhaps by a terrifying context, but which nonetheless is within man's reach. The unknown becomes the known at a given time. The unknowable, on the other hand, is the indescribable, the unthinkable, the unrealizable. It is something that will never be known to us, and yet it is there, dazzling and at the same time horrifying in its vastness. We perceive. This is a hard fact. But what we perceive is not a fact of the same kind, because we learn what to perceive. Warriors say that we think there is a world of objects out there only because of our awareness. But what's really out there are the ego's emanations, fluid, forever in motion, and yet unchanged, eternal. The deepest flaw of unseasoned warriors is that they are willing to forget the wonder of what they see. They become overwhelmed by the fact that they see and believe that it's their genius that counts. A seasoned warrior must be a paragon of discipline in order to override the nearly invincible laxness of our human condition. More important than seeing itself is what warriors do with what they see. One of the greatest forces in the lives of warriors is fear, because it spurs them to learn. For a seer, the truth is that all living beings are struggling to die. What stops death is awareness. The unknown is forever present, but it is outside the possibility of our normal awareness. The unknown is the superfluous part of the average man. And it is superfluous because the average man doesn't have enough free energy to grasp it. The greatest flaw of human beings is to remain glued to the inventory of reason. Reason doesn't deal with man as energy. Reason deals with instruments that create energy. But it has never seriously occurred to reason that we are better than instruments. We are organisms that create energy. We are bubbles of energy. Warriors who deliberately attain total awareness are a sight to behold. That is, the moment when they burn from within. The fire from within consumes them, and in full awareness they fuse themselves to the emanations of the ego at large and glide into eternity. Once inner silence is attained, everything is possible. The way to stop talking to ourselves is to use exactly the same method used to teach us to talk to ourselves. We were taught compulsively and unwaveringly, and this is the way we must stop. It's compulsively, must stop it, compulsively and unwaveringly. Impeccability begins with a single act that has to be deliberate, precise, and sustained. If that act is repeated long enough, one acquires a sense of unbending intent, which can be applied to anything else. If that is accomplished, the road is clear. One thing will lead to another until the warrior realizes his full potential. The mystery of awareness is darkness. Human beings reek of that mystery, of things which are inexplicable. To regard ourselves in any other terms is madness. So warrior doesn't demean the mystery of man by trying to rationalize it. Realizations are of two kinds. One is just pep talk, great outbursts of emotion and nothing more. The other is the product of a shift of the assemblage point. It is not coupled with an emotional outburst, but with action. The emotional realizations come years later, after warriors have solidified, by usage, the new position of their assemblage points. The worst that could happen to us is that we have to die. And since that is already our unalterable fate, we are free. Those who have lost everything no longer have anything to fear. Warriors don't venture into the unknown out of greed. Greed works only in the world of ordinary affairs. To venture into that terrifying loneliness of the unknown, one must have something greater than greed: love. One needs love for life, for intrigue, for mystery. One needs unquenchable curiosity, unquenchable, and guts galore. A warrior thinks only of the mysteries of awareness. Mystery is all that matters. We are living beings. We have to die and relinquish our awareness. But if we could change just a tingle of that, what mysteries must await us? What mysteries? Commentary. The Fire from Within, as a book, was another of the end results of the influence of Florinda Matos on my life. She guided me to focus this time on Don Juan's teacher, the Nahual Julian. Both Florinda and my detailed focusing on the man revealed to me that the Nahual Julian Osario had been an actor of some merit. But more than an actor, he had been a licentious man concerned exclusively with the seduction of women. Women of any kind with whom he came in contact during his theatrical presentations. He was so extremely licentious that ultimately his health failed and he became infected with tuberculosis. His teacher, the Nahual Elias, found him one afternoon in an open field on the outskirts of the city of Durango, seducing the daughter of a wealthy landowner. Due to the exertion, the actor began to hemorrhage, and the hemorrhage became so heavy that he was on the brink of dying. Florinda said that the Nahual Elias saw that there was no way for him to help him. To cure the actor was an impossibility. And the only thing that he could do as a Nahual was to arrest the bleeding, which he did. He saw fit to make then a proposition to the actor. "I'm leaving at 5 a.m. for the mountains," he said. "Be at the entrance of the town. Don't fail. If you fail to come, you will die sooner than you think. Your only recourse is to go with me. I'll never be able to cure you, but I will be able to deviate your inexorable walk to the abyss that marks the end of life. All of us human beings go inexorably into that abyss sooner or later. I will head you off to walk the enormous extent of that crack, either to the left or to the right of it. As long as you don't fall, you will live. You'll never be well, but you'll live." The Nahual Elias didn't have great expectations about the actor, who was lazy, slovenly, self-indulgent, perhaps even a coward. He was quite surprised when the next day at 5 a.m. he found the actor waiting for him at the edge of the town. He took him to the mountains, and in time the actor became the Nahual Julian. A tubercular man who was never cured, but who lived to be perhaps 170 years old, always walking along the edge of the abyss. "Of course it is of supreme importance to you," Florinda said to me once, "that you examine the walk of the Nahual Julian along the edge of the abyss." The Nahual Juan Matus didn't care to know anything about it. To him, all of that was superfluous. You're not as talented as the Nahual Juan Matus. Nothing can be superfluous for you as a warrior. You must allow the thoughts, the feelings, the ideas of the shamans of ancient Mexico to come to you freely. Florinda was right. I don't have the splendor of the Nahual Juan Matus. Just as she had said, nothing could be superfluous to me. I needed every prop, every twist. I could not afford to bypass any of the news or ideas of the shamans of ancient Mexico, no matter how far-fetched they might have seemed to be to me. To examine the walk of the Nahual Julian on the edge of the abyss meant that the ability to focus my recollection could be extended to the feelings that the Nahual Julian had about his most extraordinary struggle to remain alive. I was shocked to the marrow of my bones to find out that the struggle of that man was a second-to-second fight, with his terrifying habits of indulging and his extraordinary sensuality pitted against his rigid adherence to survival. His fight was not sporadic. It was a most sustained, disciplined struggle to remain balanced. Walking on the edge of the abyss meant the battle of a warrior enhanced to such a degree that every second counted. One single moment of weakness would have thrown the Nahual Julian into that abyss. However, he kept his view, his emphasis, his concern focused on what Florinda called the edge of the abyss. The pressure eased. Whatever he was viewing was not as desperate as what he was viewing when his old habits began to take hold of him. It seemed to me that when I looked at the Nahual Julian at those moments, I was recapitulating a different man. A man more peaceful, more detached, more collected. Quotations from The Power of Silence. It isn't that a warrior learns shamanism as time goes by. Rather, what he learns as times go by is to save energy. This energy will enable him to handle some of the energy fields which are ordinarily inaccessible to him. Shamanism is a state of awareness. The ability to use energy fields that are not employed in perceiving the everyday life world that we know. In the universe, there is an immeasurable, indescribable force which shamans call intent. And absolutely everything that exists in the entire cosmos is attached to intent by a connecting link. Warriors are concerned with discussing, understanding, and employing that connecting link. They are especially concerned with cleaning it of the numbing effects brought about by the ordinary concerns of their everyday lives. Shamanism at this level can be defined as the procedure of cleaning one's connecting link to intent. Shamans are vitally concerned with their past, but not their personal past. For shamans, their past is what other shamans in bygone days have accomplished. They consult their past in order to obtain a point of reference. Only shamans genuinely seek a point of reference in their past. For them, establishing a point of reference means a chance to examine intent. The average man also examines the past, but it's his personal past he examines for personal reasons. He measures himself against the past, whether his personal past or the past knowledge of his time, in order to find justifications for his present or future behavior, or to establish a model for himself. The spirit manifests itself to a warrior at every turn. However, this is not the entire truth. The entire truth is that the spirit reveals itself to everyone with the same intensity and consistency. But only warriors are consistently attuned to such revelations. Warriors speak of shamanism as a magical, mysterious bird which has paused in its flight for a moment in order to give man hope and purpose. Warriors live under the wing of that bird, which they call the bird of wisdom, the bird of freedom. For a warrior, the spirit is an abstract, only because he knows it without words or even thoughts. It's an abstract because he can't conceive what the spirit is. Yet, without the slightest chance or desire to understand it, a warrior handles the spirit. He recognizes it, beckons it, entices it, becomes familiar with it, and expresses it with his acts. The average man's connecting link with intent is practically dead, and warriors begin with a link that is useless because it does not respond voluntarily. In order to revive that link, warriors need a rigorous, fierce purpose, a special state of mind called unbending intent. The power of man is incalculable. Death exists only because we have intended it since the moment of our birth. The intent of death can be suspended by making the assemblage point change positions. The art of stalking is learning all the quirks of your disguise and learning them so well that no one will know you are disguised. For that, you need to be ruthless, cunning, patient, and sweet. Ruthlessness should not be harshness. Cunning should not be cruelty. Patience should not be negligence. And sweetness should not be foolishness. Warriors have an ulterior purpose for their acts, which has nothing to do with personal gain. The average man acts only if there is the chance for profit. Warriors act not for profit, but for the spirit. The shaman seers of ancient times, through their seeing, first noticed that any unusual behavior produced a tremor in the assemblage point. They soon discovered that if unusual behavior is practiced systematically and directed wisely, it eventually forces the assemblage point to move. Silent knowledge is nothing but direct contact with intent. Shamanism is a journey of return. A warrior returns victorious to the spirit, having descended into hell. And from hell, he brings trophies. Understanding is one of his trophies. Warriors, because they are stalkers, understand human behavior to perfection. They understand, for instance, that human beings are creatures of inventory. Knowing the ins and outs of a particular inventory is what makes a man a scholar or an expert in his field. Warriors know that when an average person's inventory fails, the person either enlarges his inventory or his world of self-reflection collapses. The average person is able to incorporate new items into his inventory if the new items don't contradict the inventory's underlying order. But if the items contradict that order, the person's mind collapses. The inventory is the mind. Warriors count on this when they attempt to break the mirror of self-reflection. Warriors can never make a bridge to join the people of the world. But If people desire to do so, they have to make a bridge to join warriors. In order for the mysteries of shamanism to be available to anyone, the spirit must descend onto whoever is interested. The spirit lets its presence by itself move the man's assemblage point to a specific position. This precise spot is known to shamans as the place of no pity. There really is no procedure involved in making the assemblage point move to the place of no pity. The spirit touches the person, and his assemblage point moves. It is as simple as that. What we need to do to allow magic to get hold of us is to banish doubts from our minds. Once doubts are banished, anything is possible. Man's possibilities are so vast and mysterious that warriors, rather than thinking about them, have chosen to explore them with no hope of ever understanding them. Everything that warriors do is done as a consequence of a movement of their assemblage points. And such movements are ruled by the amount of energy warriors have at their command. Any movement of the assemblage point means a movement away from an excessive concern with the individual self. Shamans believe it is the position of the assemblage point which makes modern man a homicidal egotist, a being totally involved with his self-image, having lost hope of ever returning to the source of everything. The average man seeks solace in his selfishness. The thrust of the warrior's way is to dethrone self-importance, and everything warriors do is directed toward accomplishing this goal. Shamans have unmasked self-importance and found that it is self-pity masquerading as something else. In the world of everyday life, one's word or one's decisions can be reversed very easily. The only irrevocable thing in the everyday world is death. In the shaman's world, on the other hand, normal death can be countermanded, but not the shaman's word. In the shaman's world, decisions cannot be changed or revised. Once they have been made, they stand forever. One of the most dramatic things about the human condition is the macabre connection between stupidity and self-reflection. It is stupidity that forces the average man to discard anything that does not conform with his self-reflective expectations. For example, as average men, we are blind to the most crucial piece of knowledge available to a human being: the existence of the assemblage point and the fact that it can move. For the rational man to hold steadfastly to his self-image ensures his abysmal ignorance. He ignores the fact that shamanism is not incantations and hocus pocus, but the freedom to perceive not only the world taken for granted, but everything else that is humanly possible to accomplish. He trembles at the possibility of freedom. And freedom is at his fingertips. Man's predicament is that he intuits his hidden resources, but he does not dare use them. This is why warriors say that man's plight is the counterpoint between his stupidity and his ignorance. Man needs now, more than ever, to be taught new ideas that have to do exclusively with his inner world. Shaman's ideas, not social ideas. Ideas pertaining to man facing the unknown, facing his personal death. Now, more than anything else, he needs to be taught the secrets of the assemblage point. The spirit listens only when the speaker speaks in gestures. And gestures do not mean signs or body movements, but acts of true abandon, acts of largesse, of humor. As a gesture for the spirit, warriors bring out the best of themselves and silently offer it to the abstract. Commentary. The last book that I ever wrote about Don Juan, as a direct result of the guidance of Florinda Matos, was called The Power of Silence. A title that was chosen by my editor. My title had been Inner Silence. At the time that I was working on the book, the views of the shamans of ancient Mexico had become extremely abstract for me. Florinda tried her best to deviate me from my absorption in the abstract. She attempted to redirect my attention to different aspects of old shamanistic techniques. Or she tried to divert me by shocking me with her scandalous behavior. But nothing was sufficient to deviate me from my seemingly inexorable drive. The Power of Silence is an intellectual review of the thoughts of the shamans of ancient Mexico. Guys, as I worked alone on the book, I was contaminated by the mood of those men, by their desire to know more in a quasi-rational way. Florinda explained that in the end, those shamans had become extremely cold and detached. Nothing warm existed for them anymore. They were set in their quest. Their coldness as men, was an effort to match the coldness of infinity. They had succeeded in changing their human eyes to match the cold eyes of the unknown. I sensed this in myself and tried desperately to turn the tide. I haven't succeeded yet. My thoughts have become more and more like the thoughts of those men at the end of their quest. It is not that I don't laugh. Quite the contrary, my life is an endless joy. But at the same time, it is an endless, merciless quest. Infinity will swallow me, and I want to be prepared for it. I don't want infinity to dissolve me into nothing, because I hold human desires, warm affection, attachments, no matter how vague. More than anything else in the world, I want to be like those men. I never knew them. The only shamans I knew were Don Juan and his cohorts, and what they expressed was the furthest thing from the coldness that I intuit in those unknown men. Due to the influence that Florinda had on my life, I succeeded brilliantly in learning to focus my unwavering attention on the mood of people I never knew. I focused my recapitulation attention on the mood of those shamans, and I got trapped by it without hope of ever extricating myself from their pull. Florinda didn't believe in the finality of my state. She humored me and laughed at it openly. "Your state only seems to be final," she said to me, "but it isn't. A moment will come when you will change venues. Perhaps you will chuck every thought about the shamans of ancient Mexico. Perhaps you may even chuck the thoughts and views of the very shamans you worked with so closely, like the Nahual Juan Matus. You might refuse his being. You'll see. The warrior has no limits. His sense of improvisation is so acute that he will make constructs out of nothing. But not just mere empty constructs, rather something workable, pragmatic. You'll see. It is not that you'll forget about them, but at one moment, before you plunge into the abyss, if you have the gall to walk along its edge, if you have the daring not to deviate from it, you will then arrive at a warrior's conclusions of an order and stability infinitely more suited to you than the fixation of the shamans of ancient Mexico. Florinda's words were like a handsome, hopeful prophecy. Perhaps she was right. She was, of course, right in asserting that the resources of a warrior have no limits. The only flaw is that in order for me to have a different orderly view of the world and myself, a view even more suited to my temperament, I have to walk along the edge of the abyss. And I have doubts that I have the daring and strength to accomplish that feat. But who is there to tell? The end.